Alright, so basically, if you read the title, you'd notice, Jack, it's Gungeoncast. That's what we're going to be calling this. This is basically going to be, if you'd like to draw similarities, similar in effect to, say, the NLSS, the Northern Lion Live Super Show, in which a game will simply be on as background entertainment while I just talk about stupid stuff or get on with chat. And rather than focusing on the game like I do with the Tekken streams or the Skullgirls stream, this will just be a stream to, spend about 2 hours and talk. Just about the way life is and things I've done throughout the week. And I believe I will be doing this every Friday from henceforth. Henceforth? Not from henceforth, but henceforth. There will be a Gungeoncast every Friday. Maybe with guests at some points. And basically, Gungeon is just my background noise. Because in my opinion, and the opinion may not be shared, but in my opinion, Gungeon is... Oh, that probably sounded gross. After you've beaten the pasts in Gungeon and unlock the robot and the bullet, I believe Gungeon is a little boring to watch and to play. Yeah, Gag, you can be a guest at some point. While I'm not saying that Gungeon's a bad game, by no means am I saying Gungeon is a bad game. It's a very fun, skill-based roguelike. It's very different in comparison to something like The Binding of Isaac. In The Binding of Isaac, you can find certain items that'll win the game for you, whereas Gungeon is, it's very skill-based. I mean, it takes a lot of... It takes a lot of good plays. But there are parts of Gungeon where I find the game just drags. Like bullet hell, really depends on how much ammo you have. Excuse me. Sorry about that, having a few personal difficulties. And that's why, in my opinion, since things like bullet hell and some of the bosses, if you don't have the right weapons, can just drag on, Gungeon makes more better background entertainment than a game like Tekken. And that's why I'll be using Gungeon as sort of a starting point for a podcast. Just to talk about things I've been doing, things I'm gonna do, schedules, and all that. And I think holding it on a Friday rather than every day, is better, because then I can talk about the week prior and next week. But this first episode here is going to be experimental, talking about plans, things to do with the other podcasts. Can't pick up that ammo. And I mean, there'll probably be moments when I concentrate on the game. Certain bosses. I'm not trying to win any runs. As a matter of fact, there'll more than likely be a few deaths in this. because I'm not actually very good at Gungeon. I mean, I'm far better at Isaac and Nuclear Throne to an extent. But I have fun with Gungeon. I think it's a lot of fun. I only really play as Robot because he's the only character I really enjoy that much. Because he's cute as a button and his starting weapon is good. But don't expect me to, offer strategies and go inside baseball on the workings of Gungeon to use a Northern Lionism. Don't expect your usual roguelike gameplay. It's a mimic. Just expect to hear me talk more than usual. Let me talk about things I've done, the week I've had. What do you want, Gag? And I will respond to chat more often than I generally do in my Tekken streams and my Skullgirls streams and all that. This will be more of a chat-heavy stream, if anything. I don't see a YV item working very well in Isaac. In Gungeon it works with the YV Shrine. And I don't see that working for a number of reasons. I forget how to use my... Okay, there's my spacebar. I'm gonna steal a key. Skeleton key. Okay, good. That's an unlock. One of the reasons I don't see it working is because Isaac isn't, it's just not Devolver. I think there's only one Devolver Digital game on Xbox right now. And I mean, that's just Gungeon, but... And with Nuclear Throne having not been on Xbox, you'll have a lot of people who don't know who YV is. But I mean, I suppose it could work. I just don't see it happening. I might just die to Trigger Twins too. And while the Super Meat Boy argument may be true, Super Meat Boy is readily available to Xbox players. They can pick up Super Meat Boy and see it. Nuclear Throne isn't readily available to an Xbox player. And Gun Gods. Gun Gods isn't readily available to a console player at all, so you'll have a lot of people not even knowing where YV originated from. I didn't even know he was in Gun Gods until, a long time after I got Nuclear Throne. But most people who play Isaac know other Edmund games. They know about Gish, and they know about Meat Boy, and they know about Steven. I mean, that's not everybody, but a lot of Isaac players know about other Edmund games. Plus, I don't know if Edmund is really up to the idea of having a Devolver Digital item in his game. I don't know how he feels about Devolver Digital. I don't claim to know how Edmund thinks. I've never talked to the guy. I've never met him. I've only ever played Isaac and Meat Boy, so. Yeah, see, that's our first death. I mean, I'm not trying to win runs. This isn't. I'm not claiming to be good at Gungeon or anything. I'm not even concentrating on the game, really. I'm just playing to have it on. How would you have a dry baby transformation? You can only get one dry baby. Did I not get the curse? There we go. Ow. I mean, you've effectively got that effect when you have black hearts. You've got the dry baby effect when you burn a black heart, so why need a transformation for that? I don't think you do damage even if you're jammed. I'm not taking any chances though. Ooh, spooky room. But anyway, yeah, just gonna touch on some stuff that I did this week. Stream plans, things like that. Nothing too, like I said, not gonna concentrate on Gungeon, but rather on the channel as a whole, and, games I've played, things I've done. Like, for example, you know, I've been watching a lot of Vine Sauce lately. I watched both Joel and Vinny play through Castlevania 3. That's interesting to watch, because it takes Joel 2 streams to finish the entire game, and it takes Vinny an hour to beat level 7. I listened to the new 9 Inch Nails song this morning. I'm not a huge fan of 9 Inch Nails, but their new song I did kind of enjoy. It's got a nice retrowave vibe to it. If you know me personally, you know how much I love retrowave. But as far as 9 Inch Nails goes, I've never been a huge fan. Never really liked their music. Never really liked the style of music they put out. Always been a little too experimental, a little too industrial for me. It's just not my speed. But the new song was good. I'll say it's one of the better rock songs out right now. It's got a good retrowave vibe to it. I like the Polybius they used for it. I think that's the new Polybius footage they used. It was pretty cool. Looked neat. It was a trip. Now I'd recommend the song, you know, to anybody that likes 9 Inch Nails, or anybody that likes retrowave and rock music. You know, it's pretty fun to listen to. And you know, if 9 Inch Nails isn't your speed, I listened to a new song by Russ this morning. Russ is a good artist. I feel like Russ was a little better before he was signed, back when he was just on Rhapsody, of course, but you know, that's not for everybody. Kid Rock's got a new song out, if you've got bad taste. Not to disparage Kid Rock fans, of course. But I really am not a fan of Kid Rock. Kid Rock and Nickelback are probably two of my least favorite artists. Least favorite artist and band, at least. Bullet King, huh? Jammed Bullet King. At least Bullet King isn't that hard. Shouldn't be too bad, especially with the Tangler. But with this stream, I'll be drawing a lot of comparisons to the NLSS, you know, Northern Lions podcast. If you're a fan of the NLSS, I'll try to maintain a level of that. You know, something like that. You know, just talking. I mean, I don't have the guest speakers that Northern Lion does, but sort of a solo podcast environment. I would draw comparisons to the Funhouse's Dude Soup podcast, but this is way different from the Dude Soup podcast. Because, you know, I mean, if you've ever watched Dude Soup, you know, this is nothing like that. That's live, you know, face cams and all that, and just talking, no games in the background. But as far as podcasts on YouTube go, I'd recommend Dude Soup to anybody that wants to watch a good one. I'd recommend any of Funhouse to anybody that wants to watch a good stream, to be honest. I'm a big fan of Funhouse. I'll always advocate for Funhouse and Northern Lion. They're two of my favorite YouTubers. My favorite team, and one of my favorite YouTubers, at least. The Real Life Friends podcast from Out Chest Breach's channel is a lot of fun to watch. It's a little more of a slower pace. No live cams or anything, just talking. The Sleepy Cabins podcast is a lot of fun to watch. That's a good, funny podcast if you're looking for, you know, just some humor. I'd highly recommend the Sleepycast. If you've never watched it, I'd recommend it. It's a good watch. I'm not a big watcher of podcasts. I watch a few here and there. I know there's a Vine Sauce podcast, Two on the Vine or whatever Vinny calls it. I think that's the right name for it. I've never given it a watch. I'm not a huge Vine Sauce guy. I only watch Joel and Vinny. And I didn't even watch Vinny up until recently. I'd always just watched Joel. I'll look at the banners after this stream, gag. Don't worry. I fell asleep last night. Okay? And you know, I can use this as sort of a platform to talk about things I've seen that I like to take a look at more of that I can't talk about during the Tekken streams, because the Tekken streams I concentrate on a lot of the fighting. Like, I can use this podcast to talk about movie previews, you know, for movies that I think look pretty cool coming out. Like, I showed Gag the previews for, I think it's called Dave Built a Maze. Looks really fun. And if you haven't seen the previews for that, you know, I'd recommend going and checking that out. If you like surrealist kind of comedies, it looks pretty good. Oh, man, less improvised Rick and Morty style humor. Well, maybe to an extent, but it's less science-based surrealism and more just surrealism. You know, I mean, of course, there's the roots in mythology with the Minotaur and the maze and everything, but May go dark here for a second. My internet connection's a little iffy. I hope not, though. I don't pay attention to Rick and Morty when it's on anyway. You know how I feel about Rick and Morty. I don't find it entertaining. It's never made me laugh. A Gungeon map, huh? That's a pretty good item. A lot of Rick and Morty's, I'm not even reducing it to just science, but a lot of Rick and Morty's humor is rooted in science. Oh, I didn't even notice that you were jammed. That laser looked pretty cool though. So you fire 3 lasers if you're jammed, or 3 missiles if you're jammed? Never fought a jammed beholster. And of course, you know, I mean, I can understand the love for Rick and Morty. You know, the rabid fan base, and I mean it's, you can draw comparisons to the Undertale fan base when it comes to Rick and Morty. You know, just a group of people defending it with, you know, ferocity and jumping on you if you dislike the show. But I've never met any Rick and Morty fans that are, you know, just grossly protective of the show. Of course, what kind of taste do I have? I watch Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid a ton. And that's a show I could wax lyrical about. But I'm sure it's not to everybody's speed. You know, not everybody likes slice of life animes. If you're looking for a good slice of life anime, I'd recommend it. I'd recommend it to everybody. I'd recommend it to people who don't even like anime, just because. Same way with One Punch Man. Highly recommend One Punch Man. Can't wait for season 2. It needs to come out now. Again, I'm not trying to, you know, write Rick and Morty off as just a science humor show. That's what Big Bang Theory is for. But Rick and Morty has a lot of humor rooted in science, and you can't tell me it doesn't. I drew the comparison the other day to Rick and Morty as my comparison for Rick and Morty. I guess as a metaphorical comparison, I told it like Rick and Morty is like the smartest guy at a party who tells jokes that nobody else gets and laughs at himself. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's a little off-putting to somebody who doesn't understand. You know, somebody looking in from the outside wouldn't really be open to that kind of thing. And from what I've seen, it's not for me. It never will be for me. I've tried to make it for me. I've tried to enjoy it. For the sake of the people close to me that enjoy it, I've tried to enjoy it. I really would like the sling. How much is it? 35. Okay. But it's like, you know, you can't take a horse, you can't walk a horse to water and force it to drink. You can't walk me to Rick and Morty and force me to like it. I'll stand by it being an alright show, and I'll stand by people who like it as, you know, not being wrong. I don't want to disparage anybody. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus for having a different opinion. you know. But I'm not gonna stand idly by and let people tell me that Rick and Morty's the best TV show ever made either. You know, like, if I met somebody that, you know, had a deep hatred for Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maids, I would, you know, I'd tell them to watch an episode or two if they'd never done it, and if they'd watched an episode and didn't enjoy it still, I wouldn't force them to try and like it. That's not what I do. I don't want to force people to try and like something. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to offer a place to state opinions, you know, have your voice heard. I'm not gonna throw away your opinion. I'm not gonna say it's worth less than my opinion. Because in the end, what really matters is that you enjoy yourself. And, you know, nobody can take that away from you if you do. If Rick and Morty makes you happy, Rick and Morty makes you happy. Just like, you know, some people don't like Seinfeld. You know, and Seinfeld's a legendary TV show, but I can understand some people don't like it. I like Seinfeld. I love Seinfeld. It's funny, but some people don't like it. And I can't force people to like Seinfeld. I can't force people to like Miss Kobayashi's. I can't force people to dislike Rick and Morty. There's no reason to even try to. You know, I can defend my opinion and I can defend your opinion, and everybody has a right to be heard and listened to and not thrown under a bus for feeling different. You know? And of course, I get what you're saying, Gag. Seinfeld's from a different time. A lot of the jokes kind of fall flat nowadays. You know, it's the quintessential sitcom. It's things that are funny in a situation. You know, if you've been in that situation, you're gonna say, "Ah, I relate to that. That's funny." But if you've never been in the situation that Seinfeld presents, then you're not gonna laugh at the situations that it's presenting. It's the same way with something like Friends, which is another good show that some people don't like. You know, that 70s show. That 70s show is a show that I'm sure there are people out there that don't enjoy. I love that 70s show. That's a personal favorite sitcom of mine. I'm a big fan of situational humor, sitcoms and the like. I really enjoy that kind of stuff. Saturday Night Live. Advocate for Saturday Night Live. Not all of Saturday Night Live. The newer stuff I haven't watched much of the newer Saturday Night Live, but the classic skits, you know, Sweaty Balls with Alec Baldwin is always going to be funny. The Justin Timberlake songs, Adam Sandler's old songs on Saturday Night Live. Adam Sandler's become a meme as of late, but his stuff on Saturday Night Live is classic, and it always will be. It'll always be funny to me. And I'll always, you know, I'll hold Adam Sandler highly in my heart as a good comedian. You know, despite his failings in Jack and Jill and Grown Ups. The Hanukkah song, Adam Sandler's Hanukkah song, will always go down as a wonderful song. If you haven't heard the Hanukkah song, you need to listen to it. That's bad. You know, it's very good. But I mean, I'm talking about sitcoms a lot, you know, like adult cartoons. While I'll disparage Rick and Morty and talk up and down about how I don't like Rick and Morty, I'm not opposed to adult cartoons. Some adult cartoons can be really good, and there's some that are bad. You know, for example, the Ren and Stimpy adult party cartoons, I think is what they're called, when they went for a more adult approach on MTV, or Spike, I think it was. Bad. Very bad. You know? It's just not very good. And if you haven't seen Ren and Stimpy, I'd recommend it. Ren and Stimpy's great, just don't watch adult party cartoons, because they're bad. They're very bad. Not even from, like, an offensive standpoint, just as a cartoon, they're not funny. The humor falls flat. Space Ghost Coast to Coast is a legendary adult cartoon that needs to be watched by everyone. You know, if you're a fan of Adult Swim, then you need to watch Space Ghost Coast to Coast. Big fan of American Dad. Follow him home. Kill his whole family. Big fan of American Dad. I love American Dad. There's times when that show will outright have me rolling, you know, it's really good. And I can't say that American Dad's only good. I know American Dad has bad episodes. Not a huge fan of the newer Family Guy stuff. I mean, nobody is really, you know, hey Peter. You know, the usual meme stuff that's not very good, but I can't say that the first few seasons of Family Guy aren't bad. You know, the first season is good. You know, when you first get introduced to Death, and, you know, a few other characters. And, you know, talking about early cartoons, I'm a big fan of the early Simpsons. The newer stuff, it falls flat. You know, it's not nearly as good as it has been. You know, The Simpsons has lost a lot. You know, if you had the time to go back and watch the classic Simpsons, I would say watch the first, you know, 5 seasons, because, you know, that's good stuff. You know, you can watch it go downhill. And talking about Family Guy, there's a few gems in there in the recent seasons. The multiverse episode, it has some really cool stuff in it, like the Disney universe. That animation is glorious. You know, Seth MacFarlane really knocked it out of the park with that whole episode. The Stewie and Brian specials are good. And, you know, I can disparage Family Guy all I want, but I have to admit that there is some humor in there. You know, it's not for everybody, but there is humor in it. The same way with South Park. South Park's gone downhill all the same. Any cartoon that runs too long will lose its luster. You know, I'll admit earlier seasons of South Park are far funnier. I've not watched a lot of South Park. Growing up, I didn't, you know, I had no desire to watch it. I wasn't really allowed to watch it. And I can understand why. There's a lot of stuff in South Park, you know, it takes a lot of risks. Throws out a lot of jokes that you wouldn't expect to see on a television show. But there's stuff in South Park that's genuinely funny, and I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't want anybody to miss out on. You know, of course, King of the Hill. I'll defend King of the Hill. for being less of an adult cartoon and more of a, you know, gather around the dinner table and watch King of the Hill with your family kind of thing. King of the Hill is a good show to just settle down and watch with your family. None of the jokes are too raunchy. None of it goes too, you know, over PG-13. King of the Hill is sort of a cartoon that I could see, you know, grandparents watching. And I'd recommend King of the Hill. Just anyone that wants to watch a good cartoon. As far as Mike Judge cartoons go, I'd say I like it more than Beavis and Butthead. Beavis and Butthead's just a little too juvenile at points. I'm not saying it's bad, but there are points when Beavis and Butthead gets a little too toilet humory. Am I saying Beavis and Butthead's bad? No. Beavis and Butthead Do America, it's a fun movie. I'd watch it. I wouldn't recommend it to everybody, but I'd say if you enjoy Mike Judge cartoons, if you enjoy adult cartoon movies, the Beavis and Butthead movie is pretty good. It's pretty solid. It's a fun watch. Make sure you watch the special edition on DVD though. That way they don't have any of the good jokes cut out. Like a personal favorite joke of mine, it's such a stupid joke. And it's so easy to make. But I like it. And it's when Beavis and Butthead are at they're at Hoover Dam. And I think it's Beavis who asks, he says, they're talking about the dam. And the tour guide is like, now does anybody have any questions? And I think it's Beavis who asks, he says, and it's a joke you'd expect from Beavis and Butthead. You know, Beavis asks, and you know, bad impression, but you know, Beavis is like, well, is it a goddamn? And you know, it just makes me laugh because it's such a stupid, easy joke. And sometimes that's just what you need in an adult cartoon, is a stupid, easy joke that everybody can make and everybody can get. You know, an accessible joke. Accessibility is important to humor. You know, you don't want to alienate your audience with smart humor. What do you miss, Gag? Jeff and Some Aliens? Yeah, I watched, I think, one episode of it, and it was funny. The animation kind of turned me off a little bit. It looked a little gross. You know, it was just kind of, you know, rough edges and very Rick and Morty-esque animations. And I think the show itself was trying to capitalize on the success of Rick and Morty, and you could tell. But it had its moments. It was pretty funny in spots. Of course, having only watched one episode, I can't judge it too harshly. Yeah, I watched the one where they body switched, and it was pretty funny. It had some funny moments in it. This is giving me free armor, I think. Oh no, she just gives me a bottle. Okay. Thanks, I guess. I don't need that, but thanks. But in that one episode I watched, it had humor. Made me laugh. I was concentrated on other things, but it did make me laugh. I think it got canceled shortly after the first season, though. I don't think it's coming back anytime soon. But I really don't keep up with too many Comedy Central originals anymore. I'm gonna die here. I haven't really kept up with Comedy Central since, I don't know, maybe 2007 or 2008, when Tosh first got popular. I really enjoyed Tosh.0. Daniel Tosh he's a really funny comedian. I really enjoy Daniel Tosh. You know, he's not for everybody. His humor is pretty offensive at points, but you know, if you can get past the offensive humor and just kind of enjoy it for what it is, Tosh is a funny guy. He's got some legitimately good quotable jokes, and his stand-up specials are generally pretty good. I can't remember the one I watched, but it was funny. Made me laugh pretty hard with some of the jokes he made. I may be able to flawless Mind Flayer here. You know, that's a lot of Comedy Central is, you know, offensive humor that some people don't get behind. And nowadays less than they used to. Comedy Central tries a lot of experimental humor. A lot of stuff that, you know, you wouldn't expect to see on a popular television network. You know, they picked up Tosh.0 as a skit show that just goes over online stuff, you know, and in my opinion, far better than Ridiculousness. Not trying to say Rob Dyrdek isn't funny. I enjoy Rob Dyrdek, but he's nowhere near as funny as Daniel Tosh, of course. You know, Daniel Tosh just handles it much better than he did. And of course, as with always, you know, it's not the same opinion as everybody. Not everybody's going to share that opinion. Some people might find Ridiculousness to be a funnier show, but I don't. I'm not a huge fan of Ridiculousness. It's made me laugh a few times, but the humor just isn't there. It's not as funny, it's not as experimental, it's not as offensive as Tosh.0 was or is. Ridiculousness to me is sort of the safer Tosh.0, if you will. You know, if you could go and call either of them safe television. But as far as TV shows go, there's nothing really on, you know, out on TV right now that piques my interests. That really makes me, you know, wanna, hey, I'm gonna watch that. I mean, I mostly just catch reruns of American Dad. And, you know, I'm happy enough with that. But I mean, if anybody's got any good TV show recommendations, you know, I'd be welcome to hear them. You know, the Castlevania show I've been looking into, I kind of want to take a look at that. Have a swatch, as Tam would say, sleep cycles. But really, as far as viewing goes, you know, viewing things for entertainment, I just spend most of my time on YouTube. I've yet to really find a show that genuinely, you know, I mean, I guess Steven Universe. You know, I'm genuinely excited to watch the new episodes of Steven Universe, but as far as current TV goes, you know, adult cartoons and otherwise, there's really nothing out there that excites me anymore. The new episodes of American Dad, I'm sure, pretty funny. I mean, maybe not as funny as they would have been a couple years ago, but still funny. Welcome back, Gag. I mean, but really, you know, I'm gonna go over the same subject 14 times because that's how podcasts work. If anybody's got any recommendations for good TV shows to watch, I'd be more than willing to take a look at them. You know, JoJo. I just recently, I'm late to that party, but I just recently started watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I mean, I'm still on Phantom Blood, so I haven't even gotten very far into it. So I don't even know if I enjoy it yet. I mean, I liked the first 2 episodes, they were fun. You know, I watched them on Kiss Anime, of course, and not on Toonami. But People of Earth, yeah, I've been meaning to take a look at that. It looks like some pretty good surrealist humor. People of Earth does look pretty funny. I've caught a few seconds of it. I've never watched a lot of it. You know, I've never really tried to go out and watch a lot of it. And that's not for lack of wanting to, it's just for lack of, you know, not having access to cable television for most of my life. But I'd be willing to give it a watch after, you know, the first or second season ends. I don't know what season it's on right now, but... Can you move, Death? Thank you. What show will I really like, Gag? Please tell me so I can watch it sometime. Archer? Well, yeah, of course, I love Archer. Archer's an adult cartoon that I'd recommend to everybody. You know, the humor's, it's raunchy, start watching it. I'm really glad that Archer exists. You know, I'm way behind on the show, but... Buy a key and Hog a battle. No armor, though. I found my other chest. Yeah. Archer is wonderful. Highly recommend Archer to everybody. You know, if you haven't seen Archer, go watch Archer now. It's just, it's glorious. It's so much fun to watch. Just gonna use mutation for a lot of the wall. Bob's Burgers. I'm a big fan of Bob's Burgers. I like anything H. John Benjamin's in. Anything H. John Benjamin's in. I love H. John Benjamin as a voice actor. You know, I love his role in Family Guy. I love his role in Archer. I love his role as Bob from Bob's Burgers. I could preach up and down about Bob's Burgers being a good show, and some people wouldn't even listen, you know, because Bob's Burgers has been, you know, when it came out, it was, you know, another adult cartoon about a family, but you really can't even draw comparisons between Bob's Burgers to other shows like King of the Hill and Family Guy. It's just so much more than that. You know, Bob's Burgers is such a relatable show. It's very rooted in reality, but still has a lot of humor. Still a lot of funny stuff there. Still a lot of jokes that can make me laugh. A lot of simple, easy stuff in Bob's Burgers, like my favorite joke when Gene can't remember the name of Bob's restaurant. And it's just like a 2-minute long scene of Bob yelling Bob's Burgers. And that's the pinnacle of modern humor. Is Bob Belcher yelling Bob's Burgers at his son. Bob's Burgers. Oh wait, I think I remember. Okay, time's up. Go visit his dad's restaurant at, you know, wherever it is. But of course, you know, if you haven't seen Bob's Burgers at this point and you come to watch this stream after it's been uploaded, or you come to watch it, you know, well, yeah, after it's been uploaded, after the fact, and you're looking for a good cartoon to occupy your time, Bob's Burgers, Archer, those both come with high marks from me, or whatever my opinion counts for. Both really enjoyable shows, both a lot of fun to watch. H. John Benjamin does wonders in both movies, or both shows. H. John Benjamin. He's a wonderful voice actor. You know, he's got that recognizable voice. Maybe not so much as Patrick Warburton, but his voice is recognizable nonetheless. You know, you'll know, if you know who he is, you'll know that's him doing that acting role. He uses the same voice for every character, like in one of the Family Guy jokes, you know, hey, you want to hear me do an impression of that guy Archer? Hey, I'm that guy Archer. You know, that's a fun joke, a jape at his own acting skills. If you enjoy good, I wouldn't call it toilet humor, but adult humor, you know, Archer it's the show for you. High marks from me. I believe it's got high marks from everybody that's ever watched it. It's been on FX this long, you know. A lot of the characters are just lovable. You know, Pam Poovey is probably one of the best female characters in a cartoon to date. Lana Kane is wonderful. Cheryl, not so much. And I just hit max curse. Oops. Oh, and I can't even talk about Archer without talking about Ray Gillette. You know, one of my personal favorite characters from the whole show. Just a very good character all around. Very funny. You know, I thought you were paralyzed. Well, I kinda was. What about Barry? No, we haven't seen that yet. That's the newer season. We haven't seen any of that. But Barry, you know, if we're talking about Archer characters, Barry is a lot of fun for the first little while he's around. His joke starts to grate eventually, but you know, in the first few episodes, Barry's a lot of fun. But yeah, I touched on this. I've touched on this like 12 times already, but I couldn't recommend Archer enough if you want a good adult cartoon that'll make you laugh legitimately. A lot of the jokes in Archer are they're a different kind of speed, you know. The whole gay episode where Archer goes to Miami, that's a lot of fun to watch. It handles a lot of its jokes. A lot of the offensive jokes in Archer are handled in such an inoffensive manner that they're made twice as funny. You know, and South Park will, you know, they'll have their political correctness episodes that are funny, you know, talking about how everybody's neutered to offensive humor, but that's lowbrow stuff. You know, it's easy to say that offensive humor is a dying breed. You know, everybody knows that. It's not hard to understand that, but to handle an offensive joke in an inoffensive manner is, you know, that's the true key to offensive humor, is to handle offensive humor in a manner that's inoffensive, the way Archer handles it. South Park knows it's offensive, and South Park embraces the fact that it's offensive. Archer knows it can be, and it handles it in a manner that isn't. And that's really what matters, you know. Don't be afraid to offend anybody, but don't try to. You know, offensive humor works on a multitude of levels only if it's not offensive. A lot of people who, you know, say that they use offensive humor, they go about it in a way that they attempt to offend people. And that's not the point. Humor isn't meant to offend. Jim Jeffries handles it in a good manner. You know, Jim Jeffries makes a lot of offensive jokes that have made me, you know, laugh hard. Norm Macdonald, he does the same thing. You know, offensive humor in a manner that's inoffensive. Just through delivery, sheer delivery, his humor is inoffensive. But if you're like, you know, if you're watching this stream post-mortem, I suppose, and you're an aspiring comedian, and you want to make a name in offensive humor, as a lot of people do, then you should try to be offensive in a manner that doesn't hurt anybody. Offensive humor at its core is intended to, you know, hurt somebody's feelings, but you shouldn't go out of your way to hurt people's feelings to be funny. You know, you can make racial jokes and poke fun at stereotypes in a manner that points out those stereotypes, you know, in a satirical manner. You know, don't just say, oh, everybody of X race or creed is, you know, Y thing, you know, because that's not funny. That's simple, that's easy, everybody knows that joke. That's not gonna make anybody laugh. Nobody's gonna be out of their seat applauding you. Because, you know, you said X people do Y thing all the time, and it's funny because it's a stereotype. That's not gonna make anybody laugh. That's not funny. The core of humor is that sometimes you have to think about it. Clam's here. Clam's here for the podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Clam. But, you know, if you make a joke about a minority, which I'm not recommending anyone do, not because of fear of offending anyone, but because minority jokes are overdone. You know, everybody's heard every minority joke. They've all been done to death. And if you can come up with a new minority joke, you know, good on you, you did it. But you're not going to get a round of applause at the Orpheus Theater for coming up with a new minority joke. Maybe if you can come up with a new priest and rabbi joke that's legitimately funny, then maybe you'll get some kind of applause, but you know, and to that same extent, trigger warning jokes, they were funny for a while. You know, triggered jokes. Triggered jokes were funny. Were funny. Keyword were. I'm not trying to defend anybody here. I'm not trying to alienate any offensive audience members. You know, I'd consider myself an offensive humorist. Maybe not on stream, because I try to keep this PG-13 as best I can, but you know, if you make a trigger joke anywhere off the internet, what do you hope to gain? Honestly, I mean, that's a joke that can be saved to the internet. And you know, it's understandable, Clam. You know, they're funny. They make me laugh. I've seen a few trigger jokes that still make me laugh, but those are jokes that only work in an enclosed environment. You know, a trigger joke isn't gonna work in a theater full of people who don't even understand what you're talking about. It's an internet joke. It's a joke that should be saved for people who think you're funny on the internet. A trigger joke you should make in a theater in public. You know, because it's going to be hit and miss. And it's not going to make anybody laugh. I'm sorry if you build your whole idea of humor around trigger jokes, and you think I'm disparaging you for that. You know, it's just that it doesn't require the same amount of finesse. You know, it's a heavy-handed joke that nobody's going to think is that funny. Triggered jokes on the internet, they work. Because, you know, people on the internet understand a triggered joke. They know what you're talking about when you say, oh, triggered. Because it's internet age humor. You walked into a discussion about how offensive humor should be handled, Ren. Welcome to stream, by the way. And I suppose, you know, as far as the trigger jokes go, the same goes for religious humor. Religious humor should be maintained in a closed environment between friends who disparage religion. You shouldn't professionally go out and make religious jokes unless you're somebody who, you know, has made their living off humor that offends people. You know, George Carlin, he's a good example. He's a very funny guy who makes a living off offensive humor. Like I said earlier, Jim Jeffries, very funny guy. Tells a lot of offensive jokes that are funny because he handles them in a manner that shouldn't offend. And if you open a joke with, if this offends X, then they're Y, you know, for example, if this offends you, then you don't need to be here. Well, then nobody should be at your, you know, your show or in your stream or, you know, paying attention to you. It's just, it's not funny. If you're going out of your way to offend people to get a quick laugh out of a few other people, you're really not trying to make anybody laugh. You're telling jokes to yourself. So yeah, like, Ren puts out a good point, you know. If you can meet out your offensive humor with jokes that aren't offensive, inoffensive jokes, you know, not knock jokes or anything that tame, but easy stuff. You know, you can have an offensive joke thrown in here and there as long as the rest of your jokes aren't. You don't want to just bill yourself as, oh, I hurt people's feelings and that makes me a comedy genius, because it doesn't. It really does not. It makes you the type of comedian that can make the same joke and think it's funny. You know? Laughing at yourself is a big part of comedy, but you've got to make other people laugh too. Nobody wants to come watch your shows or watch your streams if you're the only one laughing at your jokes. Yeah, like it's just like Ren said, you know, if the whole show is just offensive, who's gonna be there? Maybe 2 or 3 guys that spend most of their time talking about Tumblr on the internet are gonna stay and be like, this is the best comedian. But do you really want that to be your demographic? You know, you can't just try and pander to literally the lowest common denominator, because you're not gonna earn anything. You have to be able to support your demographic through more than just the people that think you're funny. You've got to be able to make people who wouldn't normally like your humor think you're funny. You can't just tell offensive jokes and expect to have an audience. And I mean, my repertoire of comedy consists of a lot of offensive humor. But I don't really make any of those jokes on stream. Because there's no reason to limit my demographic just because I think offensive humor is funny. It'd just be a silly decision on my part. You know, it'd be a crutch, a crippling factor on my part to just limit myself because I want to tell offensive jokes. Especially in this day and age, Cag, like you're saying, offensive humor is incredibly overused. You know, if you find most of your humor off the internet, off, 4chan pages, know, if a lot of your humor comes from 4chan pages and the like, well, who's your demographic then? 4chan users, you know, slash poll users. You're not gonna make any friends if you're making jokes that pander to slash poll. You're not gonna get an audience if you're just trying to make slash poll laugh. If you just want to make jokes for slash POL, then go on slash POL. Don't stand up in front of an audience of people who didn't want to see that, didn't want to hear that, and then tell those jokes. Because you're alienating a demographic, you're hurting people's feelings, you're not a comedian. You're a rude person who thinks they're funny. You're the guy in the movie who's on his phone laughing at something that you see on iFunny louder than anybody else and disrupting everybody's experience of the movie. And you're not helping anyone. You're not helping anybody's situation. You're not making anybody else laugh. You're being a douche. You know, and I mean, I guess the same goes for, you know, cuck. You know, if you just go around calling people cucks in real life, how many friends do you have? You can do it all you want on the internet. That's fine. But if you're just standing up in front of an audience of people and you're like, oh, so this guy in the front row is a cuck, who's gonna laugh at that? Nobody. It's just not, it's not humor. It's not comedy. It's a waste of everybody's time. And the same goes for your basic tastes. You know, like, I love spiders. I really do. But I understand that Ren, who is a member of my audience, you know, can't stand spiders. So I'm not gonna talk about spiders. I'm not gonna post videos of spiders. I'm not gonna do anything that has to do with a spider because a member of my audience, you know, a reoccurring visitor to my streams does not like spiders. And I respect that. You know, I respect if you don't like something, I'm not gonna make you see it. I don't like mirrors. I'll be honest with you. I hate mirrors. I have an irrational phobia of mirrors. And do I understand arachnophobia? No. I guess because my whole life I've liked spiders. But if somebody were to come up to me and say, oh, you're afraid of mirrors, well, here's one, don't be scared. You know, I'm gonna be upset. And the same thing goes for, you know, if Rin, you know, is an arachnophobe. I'm not just gonna be like, hey, well, look at this spider, it's cute. Why are you afraid of spiders? You know, that's not what I'm gonna do. Because that doesn't make me some kind of psychological mastermind. That makes me a douchebag. You know, that's not something I want to do. I don't want to just be like, spiders aren't that bad. You know, I want to be like, well, let's talk about that. Maybe one day you'll be cured of your fear. And you know, Gag is afraid of ants. And, you know, I'm not gonna question that. I've never been afraid of ants, but Gag is afraid of them, so I don't push it. I don't say, well, look, they don't do anything negative, you know? I'm not gonna force my beliefs on somebody that thinks differently. You know, like, I mean, I guess we can take it back to the spider issue just for a second before I stop talking about spiders. They don't do anything negative. You know, they're a positive force in the environment, but Rin doesn't like spiders, and therefore I don't talk about spiders. At least when I'm around Rin. Because I respect, you know, his fear of spiders, and I respect, you know, the fact that he doesn't really have any control over that.